Determine the zeros of the function defined by f of x is equal to x cubed minus 5x squared minus 16x plus 80. First off, it is worth noting that this polynomial is degree 3. So we look at the highest exponent of a variable here. That's our degree, and because it's degree 3, that tells us that we're looking for 3 zeros. This polynomial will have 3 zeros. Now remember, the zeros of the function are going to be the x values that cause y to equal 0. And f of x is just a fancy way of writing y. So we're going to be setting y equal to 0 and then solving the resulting equation. 0 is equal to x cubed minus 5x squared minus 16x plus 80. Now on the right side of this equation, we have a total of 4 terms. So I'm underlining the terms here. There's 4 terms altogether. So we're going to go ahead and try to factor by grouping because there are 4 terms. Now, if it doesn't factor by grouping, then we will have to use a more advanced method. But factoring by grouping is what you'd want to start with always when you have 4 terms. So we're going to be grouping the first 2 terms together. So these first 2 terms and then grouping the last 2 terms together. And we're basically looking for a greatest common factor. So in the first 2 terms, our greatest common factor will be an x squared. So we're going to factor out an x squared from the first 2 terms. Now I'm going to show the division here, that we're dividing each of these first 2 terms by x squared. And then the result, of course, is what we're going to end up with here in our parenthesis. So x cubed divided by x squared will leave us with just x to the first power. And then we have a negative 5x squared divided by x squared, which will leave us with just a minus 5. Now looking at the back 2, or the last 2 terms, we're looking for a greatest common factor between negative 16x and positive 80. And that would be negative 16. So we'll factor out a negative 16. Once again, I'll show the division. We're dividing each of these terms by a negative 16, the greatest common factor. And then we'll go ahead and do that division. So a negative 16x divided by a negative 16 will leave us with a positive x. And then a positive 80 divided by a negative 16 will leave us with a minus 5. Now we want to continue factoring. This is not completely factored yet because we still have this subtraction here. But instead of having 4 terms, like we did up in this step up here, we had 4 terms. Now we have 2 terms, and I'll underline them for you so you can see them. We have 1 term here, which is the x squared times x minus 5, and then the subtraction is what separates the first term from the second term, which is going to be this negative 16 times the quantity x minus 5. So we're looking for another greatest common factor between these 2 underlined terms, and my greatest common factor is the quantity x minus 5. So I'm going to factor out an x minus 5. Once again, I'll show the division. So we're factoring out the x minus 5. We'll divide each term by x minus 5 to then see what results here, what we're left with. The x minus 5s will fully divide out here. We'll have x squared, and then x minus 5s divide out here, and we're left with a minus 16. So now we have the factored form of 0 equals x minus 5 times the quantity x squared minus 16. Now, x squared minus 16 can factor further because it is a difference of perfect squares. So a difference means it's subtraction, and then both the x squared and the 16 are perfect squares. So that will factor into x plus 4 times x minus 4. So this is fully factored form. Now, remember, when it's factored, that means we have a product. So we have x minus 5 times x plus 4 times x minus 4. And since this entire product is equal to 0, the 0 product property is what lets us set each of the factors equal to 0. So we know one of these factors must equal 0. So we'll set all of them equal to 0 and then finish solving, and that will get us our 3 zeros. So x is equal to 5, x is equal to negative 4, and x equals positive 4 are my zeros. So I'll just list them. The zeros are going to be, if you list them in order from least to greatest, it'd be negative 4, positive 4, and 5. Although you don't have to list them in that order. Any order would be just fine.